we have had professional, well-known journalists, presenters, a lot of people in the media industry who have told amazing stories throughout the years. The fact that there is Western dominance, this is something that is true and that you cannot deny, and I'm happy that Sunil came in with the numbers, and it just proves our point. You said American media is valued at 800 billion
in 2028.
In 2028. So this is part of the issue. Media is a business at the end of the day. You need to make money. It's a business. So moving away from the narrative a little bit, the fact that this number is dominated by one country, or the media from one country, shows you the lack of resources, maybe possibly in other parts of the world that don't allow for our Anderson Coopers, our Christiane Amanpours, our famous and well-known and very prominent journalists to reach their voices.
But those journalists who moves from the regions to the Western center media outlets, they adapt in some ways to the culture of these outlets, or Western center outlets. What do you think they change, or what did change in them to start narrating or reporting from another perspective within those Western media outlets?
Yeah, exactly.
What changed?
I don't think the journalists change. I think the outlet itself is seeking change. And this is a very good thing that's happening. It's a trend, and I do believe that it's after the Israeli war in Gaza that it's started to become more, because what happened was the viewers were seeing the coverage. It was very blatantly unprofessional. And
what do you mean?
For example, there were headlines where they would say, Israeli forces enter Lebanon. Come on. Yes, exactly. Other headlines were saying, how many, 150, for example, Palestinians dead, killed, murdered. So they would use these words for the Russian war in Ukraine, but they were not used in a similar situation in this side of the world. So this is what I'm talking about. Now, back to the point where Western news outlets are seeking professional journalists from different parts of the world. I'm speaking, as an Arab here, but there's, they're seeking them. It's a very good change, and it's a very good step forward, and it gives those news outlets a new perspective, and that's what they want.
I think you have a very valid point, but I think one statement you made is the most critical one, which is the media is a business. When you look at $800 billion, you have a minimum of about 20 million jobs that are American jobs, and when you look at the impact of what technology had on many of our businesses, even in the Arab world, the reality of the situation is very stark. I think the profitability of the media sector in the region is in big question. Even in America, when you look at the number of jobs that have been lost from mainstream media that were institutions of trust have now changed. Thousands of jobs have been lost. And I can tell you, without a doubt, those impacts in this region as well. So when you look at media as a business, how is it going to survive this world? Especially with the massive disruptive forces of technology. I mean, all of the television channels that have eyeballs, television was king in the Arab world. No longer, and all of the Arab television media is now transforming to become much more social media because of the young demographic, and those who are visitors here, over 60% of the population of the Arab world is below the age of 30. And most of them spend 10 to 12 hours a day looking at their mobile phones. That's the only way you can deliver news. So social media has changed everything, and so has social media. So the reality of the situation is that the dominance of large media will continue to hold sway. I think unless new voices become more aggressive and strident to get their point of view across, I think the dominant Western media will prevail, and I think it's important for private sector, public sector to look at this, but to get the Arab world to have a point of view. I just wanted to finish.
Sunil, this is not only affecting the Western media, it affects
The entire world. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But since we are talking of the emerging world and new voices, it impacts us as well. So what do we do about that? How do we get our voice and our point of view across is the key question that one needs to look at.
Alex, let me just echo what Sunil said about the business of media. And yes, indeed, if the Western world is suffering from lower incomes and profits from the industry, that is also that affects Africa even more because the commercial activity is very much more reduced in the sense that media is supported fully by advertising, and that drops the capacity of news gathering and incapacitates the fluidity and the character of the TV stations and the news channels. So it is in that respect that the organizations and agencies are coming up, finding solutions of helping these channels gather information, gather news, gather content, which would otherwise be too expensive and to distribute. And that is why agencies, video agencies like why we are coming up to help at affordable cost to get content and so to enable these poor channels to tell their story, which has to be put on out there to the global media sphere, and that is what influences the media, the global media arena.
Yeah. Leaving room for Syrian and Arabic. That brings me to the next topic that I would like to raise at this panel, which is the cross-cultural understanding. Do you think the regional media outlets are in some way educating the journalists and the owners and the stakeholders of the Western Central media outlets in some ways? When, for example, you mentioned twice the war in Gaza, but in Africa could be another example, or in Asia. Is there a process of re-educating or educating those media outlets?
Yeah, I think as colleagues in general, it's a very educational and friendly environment. So everyone's learning from everyone. You know, I would call my colleagues in the US when it was the US election, even though I know almost everything about it. But everyone can learn something. So I used to ask them about the electoral college, like the swing states, what's happening here, what's happening there. Same with here. It's a very when you have a very let's say supportive environment. And as journalists, we all seek to be that. We all like to help each other. We know how hard this industry is. That's usually what happens. Now for us here, and I think it was a very good move, we are part of a bigger group, International Media Investments, IMI, and CNN Business Arabic is part of that media group. So this deal, when it happened, for me it was a very positive thing, and that's why I decided to join, because it's bringing these big names into our region with our expertise. I would say merging both expertise together to create a product that is original to the brand and our brand, IMI, and to bring out a product that is, a blending of these two things, which I think is great and is going well so far.
Yeah. Sunil and Alex.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's the activities and events which happen in the marginalized world, which offer a lot of information in learning. But I give an example of a story we did a few weeks ago, and this was a story about farmers in Kenya who have resorted to keeping bees in beehives around their farms, and the bees tend to scare away elephants, which have been coming and trampling their crops. Who would have known an elephant would be scared by a bee? And it's something that scientists have to really explain, because what happens is the strings which are going to connect the beehives together, and the elephant comes and touches them, the bees come out and they make the elephant uncomfortable and they go back on their path. So some of these are learnings which really could not have, because elephants are not captured as well. They're actually wild animals, and there's a human animal conflict, and much as the governments are trying to do that, farmers themselves are taking a step in trying to mitigate that conflict. So there are a lot of learnings which we can get from smaller communities and the new voices which are highlighting some of these events.
So I think cross-cultural understanding is far from achieved in my view. I think more and more as the world becomes more isolationist and rightist in government policies, I think the world's going to be a little more in their own bubble. I mean, talking of Africa, the media is dominated by the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza, rightfully so. But what about the millions of people who died in Sudan? That's a forgotten war nobody cares about. Where is balance in the, I mean, news media is supposed to be balanced about it because it doesn't get, I still remember, talking to a media journalist, I said, why doesn't somebody look at this? He said, because nobody's interested. This is a stark reality of news today. It's a business. So, where do you get eyeballs, where do you get readers, But therein lies the opportunity for new voices to come, trust, as I said, has fallen to an absolutely low 32% on mainstream media. One should look at that as an opportunity to bring in those new voices, encourage them. I think there is need for investment, and I think that's where I think probably technology plays a key role, because technology can. And I want to just throw one data, since you say I'm the data man. When you look at the worldwide, everybody now lives in our internet, right? So the dominant language on the internet is English. You know how many people speak English? About 21% of the world population. But how much of the language on the internet is English? 52% of content on the internet is English. Whose fault is it? How much?
It's our fault.
No, talking of faults, how much does Arabic language content in the World Wide Web on the internet?
Not much.
1%. So if you have a young student who wants to learn something on the internet, has a language barrier, and has to look at Arabic, all he's got is 1% of the language. How is he going to increase his language? Unless he learns English. And that the language is important for our identity, for our culture, so many critical things. And I think some great work is being done here, but just imagine the massive task we have in front of us. How can we make our impact in the world if we don't have, the language that users and software platforms can use? So those are
I just wanted
one data. I'll give you more.
No, you're saying very good points. I completely agree. And to your point, whose fault is that? It's our fault. It's our fault. We did not create enough stories, enough content in our language, which, most of us say we're proud of our language, whatever language we speak, we're proud of our origins. Why aren't we creating the content in that language?
But there is still a gap between when you mentioned the population and the people who has access to internet, for instance. Because of my job, I've traveled a lot in Central and South America. And you cannot consider the population in those countries as a whole. And when we talk about accessing internet or reading newspapers and so on and so forth, because first of all, not everybody has access to internet, and second of all, not everybody is well educated. Some people
not so in the internet. You have near 100% internet penetration in most countries, especially in the Gulf. Even in the other parts of Levant and North Africa, you're looking at 70-80%. Internet penetration is not an issue in this part of the world. I'm talking the Arab world. Yes, probably in Latin America and other parts, you don't have that much internet penetration. But the core of the problem is, how do we establish our new voice when the bias is baked in the internet? You can't beat that unless you do something extremely revolutionary to be able to build on that.
Because they've controlled the narrative for so long.
Totally.
And pushed out this content for so long, since before the World Wide Web and the internet. So therefore, there's a predominance because these people worked on it, and it's up there. It's now our burden to come up here, tell our own stories. You mentioned Sudan, and I completely agree. No eyeballs on Sudan whatsoever. Now, keeping in mind that, as we said, media is a business, and they want where the eyeballs and where people want to know the story, that's where you're going to go. It is not fair. It is completely not fair. And I think the solution is create your own stories. Own the narrative. People who are Sudanese, non-Sudanese, neighboring countries, people who were all devastated by this. Go out there and tell those stories, and you will force the eyeballs to come to you, and you will control the narrative. But it's just a burden that we have to take.
Yeah, I agree completely that the story we have to tell our stories, and it all starts with one step. The journey starts with one step at home, and these regional channels, I think, can now be used comfortably for information dissemination, for example, amongst different communities. And we can also use these regional, these new voices as platforms for dialogue, for so to speak, and also for promoting cultural exchange. And there's small examples, there's some examples again of a story that we've covered, just last week we covered only the second military games in Africa. And this consisted of about 500 athletes from 40 different countries. And these are actually military sports people coming together. You can imagine what that does for those countries. It creates synergy and a platform for peace and a platform for exchanging cultures, and the military generals actually becoming, getting to know each other and becoming friends, and creating ways of we can work together. And also as a platform for dialogue, we did a story in Ethiopia. The Oromo community is the biggest tribe, so to speak, in Ethiopia, and it consists of 35%, and they were celebrating their Thanksgiving festival. And this traditional has been an event which is covered which is done by the single community, but it brought all of the Ethiopians, and that they can have some very bitter rivalry amongst themselves, but it brought the Ethiopian community together, and it's become a national event, and we're trying to tell our own story. We're trying to assist Africans tell their own story in their own words, and this is being picked up by the global media space, and it's actually showing that African are in a different light, other than the traditional the traditional focus that it has had in the past. So to agree with you, yes, it is important. It's only a bit. It's just a tip of the iceberg, but the story needs to be told.
Alex, in how technology can help those regional media outlets to spread and to amplify the messages, the stories, and that's a question that I would like also to hear from you both, Alex.
Technology is playing a very major role, and I'll just give one example of what's happening. For example, the stories that we produce, and I can only quote because that's the area I'm exposed to most, the stories which are produced on our website. First of all, they're made for consumption on all platforms, and they're made on different resolutions, be it which we used on the mobile phone, on the laptop, on the tablet, and can be done on your YouTube. We are trying to tell stories also using the drones, regardless of what the topic of the story is. The drone footage always gives you all that better viewer experience, and gives that additional mileage to the story. And stories like even the story of the illegal miners in South Africa who are trapped in the mines. We had some amazing drone footage, and that draws the viewers to actually get more captivated in the story and try and get what the gist of that is. And technology also, even for stories which would have otherwise been been very like stories on politics. We've tried to use technology like a 360-degree camera, which actually makes the story more interesting and more palatable to your eyes, and the message is pushed out that much more quicker. And as far as technology is concerned, we are employing a lot of artificial intelligence technology, not just for the news gathering, but also for the production of the content, and also for finding different ways of presenting it in animation and all that. And we are spreading that knowledge by training our clients on how to employ that.
Lina, sorry.
I agree on the technology. As I said, the social media for me is the main thing. This is how you're going to get your voices out there. It's proven that it's worked time and time again. New voices, old voices, and I really believe that we need to do, marketing is so important. Marketing our shining journalists, marketing our content, pushing it out there. I think it wasn't done on this side of the world much. Now it's really at a top priority in a lot of companies, which I really do understand the importance of. So I think social media is the main thing. But back to what was Sunil saying about the cross-cultural understanding and how we're far off from that. I really wanted to touch on this point because I feel like there is a sort of grudge between East and West, and it's really amplified nowadays. I think we can all agree. Again, after the war on Gaza, there was a video, I'm sure most of you saw it. It was an Egyptian journalist on the border. Her name is Rahma Zin, and Clarissa Ward. And I think this, for me, when you mentioned cross-cultural understanding, was the first thing that popped up in my head. It was like the meeting of the two worlds. It didn't go well. If you watched it, you would know. It was like the clash of all clashes. Rahma was so upset at the way that things were reported, and Clarissa is one of the shining stars at CNN. And she told her, "Where are your condemnations? You asked us to condemn this group. Where are your condemnations? What have you done about speaking to what the other side is doing?" And then she told her, "And we're helpless because you control the narrative, you see? You control the narrative." And I still get emotional about it because she had so much to say, but she didn't control the narrative. And that's just what it was, because US media has all this money, the internet, the English language, all of these challenges, the resources, they've been there. And she was so upset about them owning the narrative and saying it in a wrong way. And I just, remembered that because we're so far off from having cross-cultural understanding, and it's really unfortunate. And I think it's our doing because of, biased reporting and, not making the full picture, and we have grudges because we're not controlling the narrative as we should be. So I think these kind of conversations are very important, and between journalists in and of themselves, to really understand each other's perspectives, and at the end of the day, our job is to bring the truth and bring the stories out there. So,
Sunil.
Yeah, I think technology can be a disruptive force, but I'd like to give some good news now in terms of what can be done. I think we all know the biases against new voices and how Western media dominates the narrative, so to speak. But I think, when you look at, we are going to live in an AI-dominated era, in an AI-dominated age. The only way we can tell our story in that AI-dominated age is to invest in technology. Technology can cut both ways, it can help us or it can cut us. So I think here in Abu Dhabi, I want to get, since you wanted examples, Gustav, I think, there is a product called Jace that is done. I think somebody spoke about it probably yesterday, which is a large language model for Arabic language. Now, those are the kinds of things that can actually help tell our story even better. There's an organization in Abu Dhabi called Majar, which translates content, good knowledgeable content from Harvard Business Review, from MIT Tech Review, from Popular Science, from Fortune, from a whole lot of international media, so that students can actually learn and get it, because our future is, of course, an integrated future with the world. So I think to bring that kind of content is so important. And I think more important, as you said, marketing what we do. I mean, technology has left the media completely breathless in this region. The amount of media that's going to close down in the next, or have closed down and will close down in the next couple of years, not even too long, is unbelievable. You know, institutions that we all believed in. How can this media get smarter? If technology destroyed you, technology can revive you as well. So you have to get smarter. If people are not going to watch you on the telly, then they'll watch you on your phone. So deliver the news on that. And I think, you know, there's a TV station called The Blinks that's just focused on young people. That focuses on young people whose attention spans are 5 seconds. It delivers news in a minute and a half. And you know what? It is successful. So there are great examples of how it can be done. But this needs a major investment from both the public and the private sector to be able to make sure that our narrative, our share of voice, and the truth is told. You know, I mean, I'm equally emotional as you are about that exchange on the border, and I think it's important that we tell our story.
Yes. And she felt that it was unfair.
Yes.
You know, she felt that she was, you know, she's a bright journalist, she's amazing, but it just, that's the way it is, and it's just unfair, and that's why we all got emotional about it. But I agree with Sunil here. Jace is a perfect example of how you can move forward using technology. An Arabic language model, it's amazing. We use it, we move forward with it, we tell our stories through it. And I hope that a lot of new technological solutions like that appear for all different languages for this side of the world, for our content to be shared. Marketing we mentioned, and I'm just going to mention one last thing. I feel like teaching and guiding the new generation of journalists from our parts of the world is so important. It is so important. You know, teachers for me are of the highest grade, whatever you're teaching. It's something that is very don't say golden or blessed for me. I'm translating it in Arabic in my head now, but you know what I mean. So I think teaching the next generation of journalists of how to tell our stories and the basics and everything that we've learned over the years as journalists who have been, you know, in this industry for a while is the perfect way to move forward as well.
Transforming narrative, new voices in the global media sphere. We have 1 minute left. I'm going to give you some seconds. If you can help me with that, with the final words. I'm going to start with you, Alex, to close the panel.
Yes, very quickly. Do you know how Africans consume international news or regional news? They record them off air from another pre-edited provider. Now we are in a position where we're giving raw material where the stations can edit that for themselves and tell them that they're also basically giving their own narrative. We shall continuously continue to amplify the voices from the global south, which is going to be in very high demand in the near future because there are growing populations and there's awareness of the potential of the world economics and influence in geopolitics will be our major goal. Thank you.
Sunil, I think just one word, invest in technology, invest in technology, invest in technology. But it's a great challenge to have, to be able to tell our story confidently and with impact, so that our point of view from the global south, as you described it, Alex, should prevail. And I think there's a way to do it, but it's a long challenge and it can be done. And I'm sure some great examples that we mentioned here is the beginning of that.
And I think this conversation is going to help.
Yeah.
You know.
Just a few words. We are the best people who can tell our story. Only you can tell your story. Go out there and own the narrative. It's a huge burden.
And Alex, thank you for your insights and for participating in this amazing panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give them a round of applause.